All right, folks, I'm going to go over a couple of problems from your practice that we did last Thursday on the nth roots and evaluating nth roots and solving equations with nth roots and all that stuff. So I have right here problem number 2, or this we have the square root of 24 x to the third y to the sixth, and we have to evaluate that square root. The first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of break up the factors here. If I have the square root of 3 different factors, I can take the product of those 3 factors and their square roots. So I just broke this up. Square root of 24, square root of x to the third, and then square root of y to the sixth. These two things are exactly the same because I can do that with the square roots and their products. So in other words, the product of the square roots is the same as the square root of the product. So I have this, and I have the square root of 24, square root of x to the third, and square root of y to the sixth. I can break that down because I know the square root of y to the sixth is going to be y to the third. So that's where this y to the third comes from. And then the square root of x to the third is not a perfect square. I'm not going to have a integer exponent, which is not ideal. So I'm going to break x to the third down into x squared times x. And I can break this down into these two products, or this product. For the same reason I went from the top line to the second line. And the reason I'm doing this now is because I know the square root of x squared. So I'll evaluate that in a second. And then I did the same exact thing with the square root of 24. The square root of 24 can be broken down into the square root of 6 times the square root of 4. And I did that because I know the square root of 4, or the square root of 4, or 4 is the largest perfect square that goes into 24. So when I'm looking at this, I have a couple square roots that I can evaluate. I can evaluate the square root of 4, and I can evaluate the square root of x squared. The square root of x I can't do anything with. I can't break that down into a smaller number, and I can't do the same thing with the square root of 6. So this can be simplified to 2. That comes from the square root of 4. This x comes from the square root of x squared. The y to the third is from right here when I evaluated the square root of y to the sixth. And then the square root of 6x comes from just taking these two square roots and kind of putting them under one radical, kind of doing the opposite of what it did from the top line to the second line. So this is our final answer, our simplified version of the square root of 24x to the third y to the sixth. Might not look any simpler, but it is simpler because we have smaller numbers now inside the radical, which is our best practice.